Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the session. I have opened the webinar doors, so the pretty large group of people that we had in the waiting room are now flinging themselves in across the threshold. We will just take 60 seconds or so to make sure that everyone can get in before we get started for real. So meanwhile, those of you who are used to our sessions and are used to Zoom will know what I want you to do because it's on the screen at the moment. Let's get the chat stream for the webinar going. If you'd like to let us know where you're joining from, either geographically or which organization you're from, or maybe you just want to say, I'm in the spare bedroom office. If you're working remotely, it would be lovely to see that in the chat. I'm joining from a dull and chilly North Somerset as well. Just to get us going before we kick off properly, it would be lovely for you to give us some kind of response to that second one. I've said, how's it going with you in email? You could either give me marks out of 10. You could kind of try and characterize the friendship or the dysfunctional relationship that you have with email. Maybe, any other words that describes how you're feeling about our main topic from the day. Lovely
Lee,
to see. How you go? Sorry,
I've
Dee?
had one comment in the chat from Ashley that she has no sound. So I'm
Oh, okay.
telling her to log in and out again.
Yep.
Um, I wondered if
Fantastic.
someone could just put in the chat that they can hear us.
Well, I'm pretty certain they can because they're responding to
Um,
exactly what I've asked them to do. So that's fantastic.
yeah, okay,
Um,
thanks, Ashley.
Brilliant. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Judy. So let us get going properly. The room is still filling up, but we only have a short time together this afternoon, and we want to make sure that we give you value in return for giving us a little section of your day. So my name's Lee Cottier. If you've not met me before, I am one of the Think Productive Productivity Ninjas, which is indeed what we call our trainers. And with me this afternoon is my colleague Diane, who is our Learning Success Manager as well. So we've got a two-handed little webinar session for you this afternoon. I'll primarily be leading on the content and the delivery. Dee is monitoring the chat and also the Q&A panel, and we'll be looking for your reactions and will be helping me weave in your thoughts and contributions to the session as we go. So what have you turned up for? You have turned up for the latest in our series for what we call people professionals. So if you work in talent or OD or HR or LD or recruitment or graduate program, or if you're just a line manager or you work in leadership or you're looking at organizational culture, we're putting these sessions on roughly every month to allow you to get something useful for yourself from the Think Productive portfolio of ideas. And I can see from some of the early reactions to how you're feeling about email that you're possibly looking for some help with that too. But also to get a taster of the kind of work that we could potentially do with your people in some of our larger workshops as well. So it's a bit of a 2-for-1 in terms of how we work. I had a little look at who'd signed up last night. Lots and lots of names I recognized either from previous clients or previous workshop participants, people I've met on LinkedIn. But just in case you've never heard of us before and somehow find your way here, first of all, welcome. We are Think Productive. We're a training and coaching company that specializes in two things. Productivity, I'm sure you've guessed, is one of those things. How can we get our stuff done? How can we wrangle all those to-dos and the tasks? But the other thing that we're really, really interested in is the well-being, the work-life balance, the care of ourselves and each other whilst we're trying to get everything else done as well. So if you're interested in those two things, you're in the right place. What are we going to do over the next 40 minutes or so? We're actually going to give you some key concepts and ideas and some techniques that you can implement and use from, I would have to say, one of our most popular sessions and also my most popular session, I think, for delivering the all-time classic, Getting Your Inbox to Zero. What a provocative set of subtitles there. Stress-free emailing for fun and productivity. Who even knew that that was possible? So I'll say a little bit more about what the full version of the workshop is like at the end. But what I've tried to do is to select some key concepts, some key ideas that we can share with you this afternoon, and also talk you through just a little bit of some of the kind of practical techniques and coaching and new skills that we would share with people on that workshop as well. So already seen some great stuff in the pre-chat about email. I've seen words like drowning and hoarding, folders everywhere, don't want to delete, need to know how to use Outlook better, all that kind of stuff. But let's get a little bit more specific. So I'm going to give you 90 seconds to head to the chat if you haven't already. And I'd like you to respond to whichever of these two catches your eye the most. Okay, so how is it in terms of email, in terms of getting your stuff done? Is that helping or hindering? Or is there some kind of bittersweet combination of the two? Or maybe you'd like to share something about the relationship between you and email when it comes to the well-being, the work-life balance, the sort of the separation, the unplugging and the turning off. So I'll just, again, we'll get those through there. We've got overwhelmed. We've got makes me feel like a failure. I dread them. Other powerful words is something like guilty, distracted, um, not being able to action things, drowning. We've got I dread coming back from leave. Notice I'm editing out all of your names here because we are recording this session, so I'm very grateful for you to share how you're feeling, but we won't put anyone on the spot during the session as well. And we've got other themes like how to prioritize, how to work out what to do, how to start, etc. These are very common things that we would hear from people in our longer workshops on email and things like that as well. The idea is that people are searching for help, and the problem is the worst that we've ever seen. Let me just have a little look at some stats. It is often reported alongside its other disruptive friend, which is dysfunctional meetings. It's often reported as the biggest enemy to actually getting our work done, creating a state of focus and flow, and really being able to focus on what matters and get some stuff done. And then, of course, the other thing that's happened over the last couple of years is it's not just email on its own anymore. It's been joined by all its other little pingy-dingy friends. And the digital overwhelm and distraction is even worse than it ever was. So when we're working with teams on things like hybrid working or supercharge your team comms, and we look at the wider digital comms infrastructure, email's still a massive component. And bizarrely, it was the one that we were told that all those other new things was going to kind of send away and calm down. And yet email traffic has continued to rise. So help is here. Help is here now in this session, but we're also going to make sure that you know how to access all the other things that Think Productive can do to help your people. Just a few other sort of final words in this section, and then I'm going to invite Dee to bring in anything from the chat that's caught her eye over the last little 5 minutes. If you've done any of the longer workshops with Think Productive, you'll know we talk about Peter Drucker, the organizational psychologist's concept of knowledge work. And it's a really big challenge for knowledge workers to kind of parse out from all of that email overwhelm, like what actually do you want me to do and who are you? And then make the decisions about how that then interacts with and makes our way into workflow. And then there's this tension between trying to work on the thing that you already have, the worker mode focus. And then as soon as that ping goes, your boss mode goes, what is that? I must look in the hidden box. I need to know. So it's particularly insidious in terms of the temptation to break flow. So people are really looking for help. They're really looking for a new way to react with and interact with these digital tools. They're incredibly important now in the hybrid world, but somewhere along the line, the magic went a little bit wrong. And we're going to share a few ideas from the full workshop with you in order to create some sense of space and some sense of clarity. Dee, is there anything that you would like to just highlight in the chat that's come in that section? I see Dennis there saying delete is the best medicine. You would be surprised, Dennis, how people never delete any emails ever and still have them from 15 years ago.
I had one message from someone asking, will the slides be shared? We do better than that. We share the whole recording for you. So you'll have the slides and you'll have Lee's narration over the top of them. You'll get a follow-up email with a link to the YouTube video. So no need to make notes. You can watch it back. And what struck me just reading the comments is words like feeling guilty and I feel like I'm unreliable. So there's like a big link between emails and your kind of mental health at work as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the time we have today, we can make a good dent in that and give some really great strategies to turn that around.
Yeah, it's a really profound part of why people are looking for the help. And that's why my opening discussion prompt is exactly what it is. There's a lot of complicated, quite nuanced, quite tricky stuff around making email a force for good in terms of getting our stuff done. We're going to share a couple of techniques with you on that side. But then there's this whole piece around the kind of digital overwhelm, the guilt, the self-view, and particularly now we're hybrid, the ability to switch off and step away when work is literally in your spare bedroom or on the kitchen table, one laptop lid lift away, is more challenging than ever as well. But there is hope. Okay. So, what we're trying to do here is give you a little bit of an insight, like possibly the quickest boot camp, most abbreviated start we've ever attempted into stuff that we share on the Inbox to Zero workshop. So, first of all, some invitations that we would take people through to kind of embrace some mindset and some behavioral changes around email and our relationship with it. And then we'll look at some practical techniques. So, first of all, let's really challenge the always on culture. Okay. It literally is the first thing that fires up the moment you turn your machine on, and it is there all day. It's probably on your desktop and on your phone, which is also by the side of you. So you might have experienced that, getting the notification on your phone 15 seconds before you get the same notification on your desktop. Incredibly clever people with multiple PhDs have worked very hard to make us want to interact with these digital devices. So taking back control from the machine by calming down, turning off, tuning out, slowing down, or at least thinning out some of those notifications and alerts and pop-ups, because raw willpower is weak and you will want to look, is kind of tip one that we talk to people about. And of course, we're needing there to get them to challenge and to question that feeling of like, well, what will I be missing? Will I be missing out? What if people need me? You know, situations that somehow we have found ourselves in and finding it difficult to back out. Also, we would like to challenge even a particular piece of language as well as a behavior. So there's this phrase that we either say in our heads or we say out loud, which is that I just need to go and check my email and then I'll go and do the thing. Or like, oh, I've been doing that thing for too long. I should probably go and do an email check. This always on, always responsive, have to react immediately. It's doing really difficult things to our well-being and to our workflow process as well. So in a minute, we're going to talk more about a slightly different behavior that we would replace email checking with, which is what we call email processing. And then the last little thing I want to say before, again, Dee will just bring in anything from the chat in this section, is really just remembering that email is a tool that exists to help us get stuff done. It is also perhaps the default tool that we go to the most and all the time. But there are better ways of us using it, and how giving us better techniques to actually parse out what people need to get to the good stuff in email inboxes without being overwhelmed by the debris and the noise. That's kind of what we're talking about in the full workshop, and also what we're talking about today. Dee, what else has popped up in the chat? I can see a few hands raised. I hope you've worked out whether or not those people had particular questions or needs.
Yeah, I've emailed and haven't had a response, so I'm
Cool.
presuming it was accident. We had a question saying, how do you turn off your notification? So I've shared our video, how to turn off notifications in Outlook.
Yeah. Yeah, they make it remarkably hard to turn them all off. Yeah, okay. Other things like focus mode in Windows can also produce the same effect as well. You know, you can get it turning on and off at a regular schedule as well. But yeah, out of the box, Outlook has about 95 different million ways to interrupt your brain and distract
Lee,
you.
I also noticed someone said they don't delete their emails, and it's a good job because they just searched for one that they needed from a few years ago. But I wonder if people know you can search for deleted items in your deleted emails. So once you've
Yeah.
deleted them, you still haven't lost them forever.
It will slightly depend on your organizational like archiving policy, how long
That's
things
true.
say and delete. But I'm going to say a few words about what happens when people keep everything in their inbox forever. I'm very happy for you to keep all emails forever. I just don't want you to be keeping them in your inbox. If you think about, please do not open your Outlook now to check, but I just want you to mentally visualize your Outlook view in the message list, and you've got like sender and subject and date and everything else like that. And there's line after line. Most people's inboxes are a mix of stuff that arrived 5 minutes ago, and then all the way down the scroll, stuff that arrived 2.5 years ago or older. I have to tell you, the stuff that we see. There's stuff that's been dealt with, there's stuff that's not been dealt with, there's live work, there's old debris that you never cleared up. People are using that one single workspace as their to-do list, their file store, their contacts book, their memory jogger. It's chaos in there. If you think about your own experience of your inbox, something comes in, you have a quick peek at it, you can't deal with it right now. So you go, I know, I'll mark it as unread again. That'll help. And you might have 3 run-ups at an email. You might know, well, which ones have I never read versus which ones have I read and marked as unread again? And then so you start putting flags on things, and then things start going below the scroll, and you're there going, oh, if it goes below the scroll, I'm never going to get it done. So then you start doing secret little things that you think no one else knows about, which is you forward the email to yourself. So it comes back up to the top of your inbox. When we share these stories with people on workshops, this is usually the moment where the whole group goes, yes, I thought it was just me. Email sucks. We need a better way. It's like that moment in Jaws where they finally see the shark and they say, you're going to need a bigger boat. It's just like, so what do we actually give people in terms of practical approaches? I can see a few people sharing their existing practices around folders and actions and flaggings. But the core thing that we teach and share with people on Inbox to Zero is that we need another workspace within email. It's not going to work if we try and do everything just in inbox and then occasionally some files and folders when we fold stuff away. We need a middle ground where things can live for a little period of time whilst they are live and whilst we are indulging in the actions that they relate to. Side effect number 1 of this is going to be your inbox becomes your inbox again. Your inbox should just literally be like the little doormat inside your door at home where stuff comes through the post box and lands, and it just sits there and it's kept safe until you can process it. Remember, I've decided to change that word checking to processing. And that means that you've now got several different places in which live work can live for the short period of time until then eventually it goes to delete and file. What are these 3 different processing folders for? They are places for 3 different kinds of emails to live whilst they are live before they go away from file and delete. So give me a yep in the chat or use the reactions if you've currently got a lot of email threads or conversations sitting in your inbox just to remind yourself that some other human is doing something that you are either waiting on or that you need to keep an eye on. Yeah. So those breadcrumb trails, those emails that you've just left yourself there to represent a ball that's in someone else's court, either you're coordinating action with a colleague, or maybe you've delegated it to a team member, or you're waiting to hear back from management about a decision or a permission, or you need key information, etc. All of those live little breadcrumbs, until they have resolved, they are all going to have a place to live, which is not in your inbox. That is going to be your @waiting folder. We'll talk a little bit more about how you might live in those in a minute. The second one is the @read folder. Now, I need to clarify what this means. This is not a place to dump emails you haven't been able to read yet, okay? This is emails. It's a little bit like putting the magazine that arrives through your letterbox that you don't want to read yet. You put it on the coffee table in the house. It's like your little digital reading library. This is a place where emails that are more things like all staff bulletins, minutes of meetings, presentations that you need to review, circulars or newsletters that you subscribe to, stuff that's kind of, the information is worth passing through your brain, but it's likely to be action light or action free. And the time tempo at which you need to get to it is maybe of the order of half a week to a week or 10 days, rather than it being something that's part of your live day-to-day or hour-to-hour workflow. They're going to have their own place, etc. Nikki, I never have time to read anything. We will talk about how we might be able to correct that. And then the action folder is where the good stuff is going to live. This is going to be where you're going to keep email conversations that are representing tasks you need to do. Either the task you need to do is to do a thought through and deliberate reply to that email, or just the conversation thread represents an action that you're doing out there in the world. And then maybe when you've resolved and finished that action, you then come back to that email thread, either to deliver the result or to finish it off or to send out the news or something like that. You have all of these different kinds of email already. Just at the moment, they all live in your inbox. And even when each of those three flavors resolves and is finished and the story has moved on, they tend to never leave. This is why people come on our workshop, Getting Your Inbox to Zero. Remember, this is a little flavor of it. And they will quite commonly have hundreds, thousands. Every workshop, we will have at least a couple of people with north of 10,000 plus emails backlogged in their inboxes. And as well as the day-to-day pressure of the bombardment and the rate of things coming through, just the weight of that backlog and the confusion and the debris that it creates can be another part of why email is so completely doom-laden. Dee, is there anything else I've missed in the chat before I get very specific about how do people use these three processing folders? Gareth, the most I've ever seen in someone's inbox is over 150,000. Wow. Most I've ever got somebody to zero with in the half-day workshop was 48,000. That person entered with 48,000 and they left 3 hours later and they literally cried, but in a good way, in terms of the kind of emotional progress that resulted of cleansing those. Sorry, Dee, what have we got in the chat?
We've had one comment: if it's in a folder, I'll forget it's there.
Yeah.
Which may be a classic symptom of having too many folders. But if you set up these three processing folders, then when you ask yourself, what do I need to do today? Everything you need to do is in your action folder.
Exactly. It is a common kind of resistance point that we get when we fold out this technique to people. Remember, we're doing this at pace this afternoon. This is part of what is normally a half-day workshop. So we will take the information and we'll kind of give people a little bit of time to spend with it, to ask the questions, etc. Michelle, can you explain what the problem is without having lots of red emails in your inbox? It's because it is camouflaging, overwhelming. It's all mixed in with the live stuff. You know, if you've got red things that you've dealt with, but there are some unread things that you've not dealt with that are 40, 50 emails below, every time your brain wants to go into that inbox and say, right, okay, there was a thing in here I needed to do, it's going to have to clamber over all of that old stuff. And you're going to be making that decision and doing that filtering over and over and over again. As Dee said, the advantage of having these three distinct processing folders, and we're going to talk about how they get loaded with work, how you do the triage in a second, is that when you go to your waiting folder, that is purely about tracking things that are with other people. Have they got back to me? Do I need to chase? Have I heard from them? Have I not? Has that happened? Yeah.
It's probably worth saying that you might be looking at this and you might have a different folder system that works for you. It might not work for you in your role, but you might have people in your teams or in your organizations who are coming to you feeling so overloaded and just overwhelmed with emails, and this might be something you can show them and say, okay, let's get everything you need to do in one action folder and put the rest in somewhere else.
Definitely.
You don't need to action.
The behavioral change is quite a thing. That's why we hold people's hand through it. We get them lots of resources, we give them lots of coaching, there's lots of follow-up. But you know, the read folder, having that distinction between action related emails and information absorption related emails, and then the action thing. But I totally take the point in the chat, which was that the reason I left it in the inbox was so my brain wouldn't forget it. So getting people to do this gear shift between where I go to find an email that needs me to do a thing, they are now sitting in my action folder rather than in my inbox. And my inbox is just where new things arrive in between my processing dashes. So let's talk about that a little bit. We find that once people have got in control of their inboxes, they've cleared the backlog. We take them through that during the live session, whether it's an in-person version or we do it virtually in Zoom breakout rooms, and they clear hundreds, they clear thousands. Sometimes they clear tens of thousands. We have some advice for you if you're thinking of tackling that after the session. They feel that they can then create islands and windows where they don't have to be connected to the email all the time. So it's going to vary according to the nature of your work and your workflow. But some people say, "Oh, I've now got to a stage where I can process these emails in batches 4 times a day, or I do it 10 minutes at the top of every hour, or I do 20 minutes online, connecting, communicating, collaborating, getting the latest stuff for my action folder, and then I go and do 40 minutes deep work." If you've been on any of our other sessions, you'll know all about weapon savvy and stealth and camouflage. So I would invite you after the session to challenge this thing of like, it needs to automatically always be squirting in my brain, and think about what your processing dashes could look like. And that is where things get put by you into the 3 processing folders using your boss mode thinking. And then you set up the workflow. So imagine you're now moving to 10 minutes at the top of every hour. You've been off having a meeting, or you've been doing some deep work, or you've been traveling. You're back, you fire up Outlook for the first time in an hour, and you find 15 new messages that have arrived for you in the last hour. You're in boss mode, and all you're doing is filtering, tidying up, and triaging. First of all, what can you just delete on site? Because you just can see, even without opening it, that it doesn't deserve to be in your inbox and in your world. Let's do that clearing now. You flip open a few other more kind of low value, more peripheral conversations, things that you're CC'd in, and you go, great, okay, I've heard that, I can see what's going on, but there's no action for me here right now. I'm going to file it now. This is another behavioral habit that we're trying to embed with people, which is the reason that the build-up happens is because we don't do clearing up as we go. You might have got rid of half of that hour's batch straight away, and nothing has even entered any of your 3 folders. And then for everything else, you're just eyeballing them all, either just from the subject line or you're opening the conversation. And all your aim is to do during that processing dash is to then triage them into the relevant 3 processing folders. If it's something that I need to track, somebody's emailed me and say, yeah, I haven't found out the answer for you yet, but I'll let you know later in the week. Just going to drag that into the waiting folder. Oh, brand new issue of LinkedIn tips for business development professionals. Sounds great. I'm going to put that in my read folder, and I have my little reading session in my calendar, 20 minutes on a Friday morning with a muffin and a coffee. That's when I consume all that kind of stuff. And then everything else that's an action, if it isn't just literally a 1-line reply, which we're going to just bang out then as well, we just make sure that we know that that's an action related email, and we move it into the action folder. And what you're trying to do, therefore, is regularly sift through these latest batches, get to 0 every time you process a latest batch, and you are loading work into each of those 3 folders. And so your inbox clears each time and never mounts up again. Dee, is there anything that's come in the chat that I need to address?
A really good question. So many people are CCing me in something that there's no action required. Would you advocate just not reading them? And I would say maybe actually that you need a bit of a comms manifesto and email etiquette overview internally, so that you're really clear as an organization, this is when we CC and this is why.
Yeah, I mean, that's work we do on the Supercharger Team Comms workshop. There's an email etiquette section in that workshop. It could either be a targeted conversation with one individual who's doing what I call in my head working out loud, particularly if it's like a member of your team and they maybe just need to be reassured that like they don't need to swipe you in on every next step. Or, and Elaine has just beaten me to it, you can get the machine to help. You can use a rule and filter that will color code an email in your message list view in a different kind of texture or color, depending on whether you're in the to field or the CC field. So there's lots of weapon savvy stuff there as well. People say, okay, that sounds great, but like, how do things leave those 3 processing folders? Carla, I've seen your thing about shared inboxes. I'm about to say something about in a minute. This is the other behavioral shift that we will invite you to embrace if you go this way, which as well as working out what your regular weekly beat for processing dashes is to deal with, to categorize, to clean up, to parse down that latest batch, you also need to concentrate on those new workflow habits where things then get your attention in each of those 3 folders and where they make it out as well. Okay, so the workshop that we're talking about is called Get Your Inbox to Zero. It's not called Get Your Action, Read and Waiting folders to zero. Those will never be zero. But now you've got a way of actually seeing how much live work is sitting in each of those, and also checking what sort of pace and progress you make through those folders as well. Because when a waiting is no longer waited for, those emails go to file or delete, depending on what's appropriate. When a read has been read, it again goes out to your little folder where you collect all the little lovely newsletters or whatever. When an action has been resolved, it moves away to either delete or file, depending on what your record keeping requirements are as well. The other thing that you can do is if you right click each of those 3 folders and you get them to display the total number of emails in each of those 3 workflow folders rather than the number all unread, you will get a really nice kind of little control panel, a little temperature test for how many things are in each of those folders, and they will chug along at a level that makes sense to you. But if you start to see them mounting up a little bit, you know that you need to kind of replan your day or replan your week or something like that. I am going to say the 5 minutes about how anybody who actually wants to get their inbox to zero can have a go at it after the session. But again, do you want to just draw my attention to anything important that's come in the chat in that little section?
No, people are asking about how to do the color coding. So
Yep.
I've put a support video from Microsoft, which I think most organizations use. But if you use something other than Microsoft, if you just Google it, there'll be instructions.
Yeah.
And YouTube
Cool. I've
tutorials.
seen the one from Trevor. What's the difference between an action folder and your to-do list? Great question. Okay. So we're just talking about email centric techniques at the moment. We have loads of other stuff where we talk about wider workflow. Typically, your action email folder would be like a subset of your overall task management and actions. Some, if they're going to work their way through that part of your system, you know, within the day, they'd probably just stay only in the action folder. If they were going to hang around for a little while, or they were connected to a wider piece of work, and you had another task manager, what we call a second brain spun up, like a Microsoft To Do or an MS Planner or a Trello or a Todoist or an Asana, you might actually be better off putting the breadcrumb trail in that, and then maybe creating a link back to the email, which of course things like Microsoft To Do can do, because then you don't even need to keep that email in your action folder. The thing that's going to make you do that thing exists somewhere else in your wider workflow management as well. So let me just summarize, and then I'm going to give you bonus secret content about how to actually get to zero. So everybody is absolutely overwhelmed with email, but there is a better way. We've tried to give you in the short session that we have today some really important glimpses into what that might be. So there's some behavioral and cultural stuff, both at the level of the individual, but also at the level of the team. So, you know, are we using that email collectively as a course for good? Are we protecting ourselves and our attention against the digital overwhelm? Are we challenging the always on just leap when the machine tells us, or are we getting back in control of the boss mode thinking? And are we actually using email in a way that helps us get our stuff done rather than being one of the ways that hinders it? And the key little thing that I've talked about therefore for you, and you can have a go after the session, is moving to batch processing of emails in blocks, in bursts, rather than the always on. Using that boss mode thinking to filter through each new batch as they come in, get your inbox down to zero each time, load up the work into the 3 processing folders where your workflow will now happen, but also clean up and clear away the other stuff as well as you were going. And then just really practice once you've got those 3 folders set up, looking at how much of your day you need to spend. You know, do you want to go in and have a look at the status of your waitings just once a day? Or for you in your role, would that be twice a week? Or if you're using something from our full day course, the weekly review habit, is that part of something you do on your weekly review checklist? Depending on how much gets loaded into your at read folder, do you need to have 15 minutes in there once a day to make sure stuff chugs through there and then leaves? Or is that a once a week behavior for you? And then, and this is the key thing that the people were saying, well, like, how will I not forget to do it if I move it out of the inbox? Your action folder is where you're going to go in between meetings or when you've got a half day at your desk, when you're going to say, right, where were all the things that are represented by an email that I needed to do something? And you just go straight to your action folder and you know you've got clean, clear, ready to do work for you that's represented by email threads. You don't have to constantly clamber over the debris and the old stuff in order to find it. And to make sure that you get stuff done, make sure you ingrain that habit of touching to zero, ideally every time you process, or at the very least, every time you shut down for the end of the day. Okay, bonus secret content. When Dee and I were planning this session last week, we debated whether even to tell you this stuff. But I said we should, okay? So everything that I have said before assumes that you've somehow magically dealt with what you're probably looking at in your own email, which is 900, 2,500, 8,500, 14,000. How do I get rid of all of that stuff in order to do this fresh start that you're talking about? So again, on the full workshops, we take about 15 to 20 minutes to talk people through what I'm going to do here in 3 minutes, both to kind of practically prepare them, but also to emotionally prepare them. So we're going to see how you can do with the ultra short version. Create a space, okay? It doesn't matter whether you've got 600 or 6,000. This kind of inbox purge is doable in around 90 minutes to 2 hours. That's why we're able to get people to actually do it live with us in the workshop when they are there. And then you're going to go through what we call a hacking and then a processing dive, and then you're going to touch to zero, maybe for the first time ever in your life, and then the good stuff starts to happen. But what's interesting is if I say, okay, it takes 90 minutes, that doesn't mean if you've got a 4,000 inbox that I've got 45 minutes to do the first 2,000 and then 45 minutes to do the next 2,000. You need to be really brutal in the first 20 minutes. Okay, you need to be looking for that really old stuff. You might implement a tip called email attic, where everything from 2022 you just put in a 2022 folder and back away and hope nobody wakes it up, but if they do, it'll be there. Or maybe it's from the last financial year or before the current project you're working on. Looking for big conversations, all those alerts from LinkedIn, all those meeting room booking conversations, all that stuff to do with recruitment for a position that was filled 9 months ago that for some reason is still in your inbox. We give people techniques to how to find that chunky stuff and to get rid of the easy to dispose of stuff first. Okay, that gets people warmed up. It gets them excited about the process, and it gets them ready for then the stuff that needs a little bit more thinking. So we tend to find as people close in on the last couple of hundred, that's when they start need to doing like a pretty chunky processing dash. So similar to what we were talking about before, but just with pace, with clarity. Can I delete it? Can I file it? If it's neither of those, it's got one of those 3 places to go, the action, read, and waiting. Maybe similar to what you might then find yourself doing when you've been away on 2 weeks leave. And you will keep closing in on it. You will keep chasing it down. And then there will be that magic moment where the screen doesn't scroll anymore. And then there will be that even more magic moment when you finally, for a second, touch on zero inbox for the first time, and you will breathe and it will feel amazing and it will feel weird. And then don't worry, because within 20 seconds, someone else will send you another email. But, you know, as I say, we coach people through that with a little bit more care and a little bit more pace on the full workshop. We give them the practical techniques for doing that hacking. We talk them through the processing, etc. But I believe in you. I think even with that short description, and if you want again be pumped up and motivated, you can watch it back on the video before we dive in. But to really motivate you, if anyone does it and gets to zero from that short description, and it will be completely on trust, I will believe you. I'm not going to demand screenshots. If you do it and you also connect to me on LinkedIn, if you want one, I will send you an Inbox Zero Hero badge to mark your achievement. And that's quite a promise, because there's 160 people on this webinar, so I could be going to the post office a lot. But just imagine the conversations that could start if you're in one of your in-office days in the next couple of weeks and people see this badge on your lanyard and they go, what's that? And they just casually can say, oh, that's my inbox zero badge. And then they go, what? And then you can start a really great conversation with your colleagues about how we can create some positive email change. We've got about 6 minutes to go before our advertised time is over. Dee, what have I missed in the chat, or what are people asking for some clarification or some amplification of? And then we'll start heading into the end bit.
I'm just putting in the chat, send Lee your pictures, clean inbox. And then I'm popping your email address as well.
Cool. I did actually, I mean, it's too late now because you've done it. It's out there in the wild, and I'm happy to do it from just an email taken on faith. But I did actually say you need to find me on LinkedIn to be technically
I'll do
eligible.
that.
There you
Great.
go.
Well, that's good. I'll put that in.
So as well. Is there a quick way to archive in Outlook? Yeah, this is the interesting thing. Again, we're going to send you a taster of some of the video support that goes with the full workshop in the follow-up email. We make sure people have got access to all the kind of tips and tricks that they're going to need. The other thing that we kind of see is people just gaining confidence. Frankie says, I don't have a LinkedIn. Well, first of all, well done for staying away from yet another form of social media, Frankie. I will be willing to send you a badge based on just purely an email, etc. Just people getting used to things like, how do I highlight 15 emails and delete 15 at a time, or move 15 at a time to a folder, or getting more confident with search. That's kind of the other aspect of things that we help people with. It's amazing how many people there are that still have some really good places to go with their own sort of tech confidence within Outlook and email, and how much of a real benefit that can give when you just give people 3 or 4 of the kind of tips that we end up sharing with them in the kind of the live coaching part of the workshop as well. Cool. So again, Dee, if I've missed anything, do bring my attention into it, but I'll just want to recap where we have been for that whistle stop tour. This was meant to be particularly for people, what we call the people professionals group. And what I found, because I was working within a group yesterday, is that quite often in those functions is where the shared inbox fun happens. So I promised people that were going, what about shared inboxes? What about shared inboxes in the chat, that I would address that. Quite often it's like the recruitment people, or the people working with payroll queries, or any other kind of like action request within the HR function, or like training booking. There might be several of you working in a shared inbox. Again, don't implement this without talking to the other people that work in that shared inbox with you. Maybe send them the video link and go, can you watch this, and then we're going to have a chat. Okay. But it's a really nice way to get 3 or 4 people who want to work in a shared inbox using this kind of processing dash. Each of us might take a turn at different points of the day, working out what our rules are for how we decide what to put in the action folders. Maybe you have a couple of little action folders for each different person, or maybe you use categories or something like that in order to work out who you're going to assign each work to as well. There's lots and lots of ways of using these techniques in a collective way as well. Dee, anything else in the chat that I have missed that you want to bring in?
No, only that I've popped in my calendar link if anyone wants to chat about bringing us in to deliver the workshop for their teams.
Fantastic. So last little chat appeal before we then do the admin wrap up and we get you out of here on time. I would like you to all head to the chat and tell me something that's changed with regards to your thinking or feeling with respect to email, or something you've decided you need to do, or a conversation that you need to have. The puppy on the left is kind of unkempt, knotted, hairballed. The dog on the right is all groomed, clean, sleek, ready for action, etc. Judy says, I can do it, exclamation mark. Claire really enjoyed the stuff around foldering and tasks, etc. I'm not alone and I can do it, less scared. Allocating time. Yeah, 90 minutes to 2 hours will totally do it. Put an appointment in the calendar, maybe find a buddy that's going to do it with it. People have already set up their 3 processing folders. If you're going, that was great, but I'd like a little bit more detail. Any of you who've got hold of How to Be a Productivity Ninja book, the course is basically summarized in chapter 4 of the book as well, Email Ninja. So you'd be able to maybe even get a copy of this and push it across the desk at someone that you know also needs a little bit of help as well. I can also see there's some fans of the book as well. So final couple of minutes. I always stay on for a bit of sneaky after show, so we'll be able to do that as well. If you think that this is something that would help your people and you'd like to know a little bit more, Dee has dropped in how you can get hold of her to have a little bit of a chat. But that was just a few of the key concepts from our Getting Your Inbox to Zero workshop. That is normally 3 hours for a group of 15 people. And in that version, we actually make them do it while they're there, which is fantastic. We also have a 2-hour version of it with many of the same ideas, but we don't do the live clearing. What that means is that we can take a larger group, and we call that the Productivity Ninjas Email Survival Guide as well. If you've liked this free session, and maybe you're already fans, you know how to find them, but we have more coming up in the People Professional series. If this is the first time you've ever found yourself in our world and you're going, these are great, what else have you got? Head to our website. Dee's going to put the link in the chat and go to the Try It for Free tab. And you will see both what we call the People's Professional series, which is these ones. And then we also have what our general audience skills sessions are called. We call them the Ninja Skills sessions. And there's usually one of each per month as well. And again, we just highlighted the next couple from each series. But if you go to the website and have a look at the Try It for Free, those are all up there along with lots of other stuff. So we are at time. Another trademark of Think Productive workshops is they run to time. If you want to stay in touch, we would love it. I've already invited you to find me on LinkedIn if you want to claim a badge, but my contact details are there as well. Dee would also love to hear from you if you'd like to have a conversation about the work we do in a more general sense, how we could bring some of this or anything else that we do from the catalogue to your people as well. And even if we never hear from you again, I want you to leave the session knowing that there is a better way with email. We can take some of the pain out of it. And again, just some of those little quick ideas are part of the kind of things that we will bring to your people as well. Thank you very much. That is officially the end. I think we will stop the recording in a minute. So if you're a person that has just watched this back on YouTube, either for the first or the second time, because you loved it so much live that you wanted to watch again, well done on getting to the end. And the invitation to embrace the Inbox to Zero challenge and to claim your badge applies to you too as well. And maybe we'll meet you on another live session as well in the future.